Hello everyone, and welcome to the Music Masterclass for today, May 19th, 2022. And I decided to start the music right away here and uh, see, I don't know how that actually works, because I know one of the things that I do miss from the YouTube version was that we could start the chat before starting the video, and that was always nice. But yeah, this is what we got, and so I am still experimenting with ways of doing this, and I'm just stalling to give people time to be here, basically. So hopefully people are getting here, and I see some people showing up, and so that's great. Good morning, Rod, or good evening for you, good middle of night. um, and Yes, this is the Music Masterclass, and welcome everyone. And I'm going to continue to sort of stall a little bit, give some more people some more time to show up here, because I know it always takes a minute. And so let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. So I have a couple of things in mind. One is I'm going to continue talking about the contest for the duration of the month while we're running the contest, and I want to again encourage people to enter, to go through it, and just submit what you got. It's a learning exercise for everyone, so don't worry if you don't have the perfect whatever. Just get on board, give it a shot, see what happens. And we're all coming from different perspectives, and we're all going to do different things with it. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the contest and some ideas to toss out there, and then I want to focus on a piece that was posted a while ago from Joel. So I'm hoping he's going to be able to show up. I was contacting him a little bit ago. So his piece is a fugue for a brass quintet, and it's a really interesting, both in terms of the fugueness of it, but also the orchestration of it, and there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about there. And he's a great composer, and I think if you haven't already checked it out, you're going to really enjoy the piece, and hopefully we'll find some good things to say about it. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm again going to load up the the piece for the contest, and I'm going to load the version here that, yeah, just the chords only in the key of A, the original key. And I want to again remind people you are not limited. This is not like a really specific, you must do exactly this thing. This is a jumping off point for you to be creative. And so these are the chords that Abraham wrote. And this is his reharmonization again of a piece from a Handel oratorio, the Judas Maccabeus oratorio, but I still don't know where it comes from. I'd still love it if someone was able to figure that out, but you'd have to know the original melody also, and for various reasons we're not showing that much. Kind of by request. So, because we don't want people to be too influenced by the original melody. So, in any case, this is the original chord progression, and you're not required to keep to this exact chord progression. This is your starting point, but if you need to make some additional adjustments, go for it. If you need to double the length or quadruple the length of the chord so it's not one beat per chord, go for it. If you need to move it to another key, go for it. It's really about you taking this as a starting point for your own creativity. So, what I want to do is I want to write a little quick melody for this thing. I'm not going to put a ton of thought into it, but I want to show you what my process might look like. And then talk a little bit about orchestration, because that was something that came up. And I think it's a really interesting topic to talk about. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this file, and the very first thing I want to do is save a new copy of it so I don't mess up my original version. So I'll go File, Save As, and make a new copy. And I'll call this, I'll just put my name on it. There we go. So now I have a new copy of this thing. So now my next thought is, am I going to keep to this one chord per measure business, or am I not? And I think I'm not. I think I would prefer to deal with it twice at twice the tempo, or twice the duration, half the tempo, however you want to look at it. Chords taking twice as long. So here's how the chords sound now. All right, so that's how they're sounding right now. So. And well, I got faster at the end, but I think I want them to last basically twice as long, just because I got to do something. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to select now. So this is my new copy of it with my name. I'm going to make sure I'm not messing up the original. I select that, and then I'm going to copy. And now what I want to do is the command paste double duration. So under the edit menu, you'll see this command that says paste double duration. Now what I can't remember is it going to add more measures for me? I don't know. If it does, great. If not, I'll add some measures myself. Ha! It looks like it did. So it added the measures for me. What did I do though? Okay, so somehow that didn't do what I expected it to do. Let me actually cut and now paste. And I think I just did a paste. Let's see, paste double duration. There we go. This is what I'm talking about. Right now the chords are lasting twice as long. This repeat bar is no longer in the right place, and we don't really need it anyhow. So there's that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to have it be 2 chords per measure instead of 4 chords per measure on average. The other thing I don't necessarily want is I don't necessarily want the line breaks. Well, the original had like the line breaks every 2 bars because there were four chords per bar. I'm not sure this is where I want my line breaks anymore, but what I'm going to do, I think I'll leave it there that way for now. But since it added all these extra measures for the, now that I've doubled the duration, it needed to add measures. They don't have breaks anymore. So I'm going to come to the format menu, format, add remove system breaks, and I'm going to tell it I want breaks every 2 bars throughout the whole piece. Boom. Now I've got breaks every 2 bars throughout the whole piece. And so this just gives me good kind of starting place for writing. And the next thing I want to do is write my melody. And I've given myself a couple of beats. This is not the tempo I want anymore. Let me put in maybe a 72 or so tempo. Slow, but not crazy slow. All right, so that's my tempo. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to write a melody. And I'm loving the chat here. And by the way, as far as locations, you all know that I'm in Denver. Colleen's in Denver. I just came from a presentation that someone was giving. Oh, and I'll tell you about this because it's going to potentially be quite interesting coming up. Circle is the name of the platform where the community is hosted. This is where you're on right now, is on Circle, circle.so. And they have their own community, and one of the community members there, who is also based in Denver, recently did a summit, like a 3-day summit with a whole bunch of speakers talking about a variety of topics related to what her community has to do with public speaking. More than that, but that's maybe its main thing. And so she did a 3-day summit on Circle, and she didn't even use this live streaming because she hadn't quite figured that out yet. She used Zoom, and there's lots of different ways of doing this, but she had set up all this stuff within Circle to do like this whole 3-day event. I'm looking at doing something like that when MuseScore 4 comes out. So I'm looking at doing a big summit for MuseScore 4, have multiple speakers. I'll of course, plan to head up a lot of it because I'm the one who knows the most about it. But I'll bring in some people who are on the MuseScore team if they're willing, and see what happens. But anyhow, so I was on that presentation. I was listening to her presentation about her summit and her experiences in doing it, and there was like 20 people there, and 4 of us were from Denver, so that was crazy. So anyhow, I now have my thing set up here, and what I want to do is I want to take a step back, and I'm also going to move the chat over here so that while I'm talking, I'm still seeing it. And I will, that's going to only last there sometimes. But I have to think, I don't want to just start writing. And that's the thing that I often do, is I just start writing because I'm demonstrating things. But that's not what I do in real life. I don't just start writing. I sit and think. I sit and I think and I think and I think. It's just boring to watch me think, right? So I don't tend to do that in demonstrations. But this is, I want to emphasize that's what I do. So I might have my eyes closed and really think through what I want to do with this piece, what I'm envisioning. So what I'm going to do, though, in the interest of not boring you by making you watch me think, but also I do want to show you something that feels real. I'm going to write my melody first, and then I'm going to think about the orchestration. That's not uncommon for me because as a jazz musician, we often disassociate the melody from the thing we build. We might have a tune that we play, and we might play it as a solo piano piece or a trio or a quartet or a big band arrangement or whatever, all based on the same tune. So I'm very comfortable with the idea of first starting with a melody, then figuring out what I want to do with it. It works for me. So I'm going to do that here. So I've been playing. Right? That's essentially the melody that I've been playing. Yes, I have been to England once. I spent like 3 days in London. That's my only British experience. Right? And I've been playing that just as a way of voicing the chords, but it's already cemented itself in my head as the germ of a melody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a melody that's based on that germ. So already I'm changing it because originally it went down to the G sharp, and now I'm hearing, and I have to ask myself, am I okay with this? Because I just made up this little melody thinking I was going to like it, and I do, but how much do I like it? Because this is a C sharp minor chord with a G sharp in the bass, and I'm trying to put an A in the melody on top of it. This interval is quite dissonant. Yeah, it's quite dissonant. And really what I've turned it into is an A chord, an A major 7 with a G sharp in the bass instead of C sharp minor. And it's not something that I do every day. I don't often let myself have that dissonance. It's quite dissonant. And I could reharmonize it. I could change things around a little bit more, but so I'm just sort of thinking through a melodic idea. Okay. Okay, I like that. So am I in 4/4? I haven't even thought about my time signature, but I've been thinking 4/4, so I probably am. These now I think of bum 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 bum. I'm really more in 12/8. Hey Joel, great, glad you're here. So yeah, I'm going to keep talking about this piece for a little bit, and then I will invite you to come join me before I talk about your piece, if you're up for it, Joel. All right, so I'm going to call an audible on this and change the time signature to 12/8. Now, as soon as I do that, I realize that my chord symbols are no longer going to be necessarily in the right place. So I'm going to have to think about whether I can pull this off, but I think I can, and I'm going to copy everything first, and because I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work. So this is a little bit of MuseScore Cafe for you here. When I change to 12/8, now these chords are like not really in the right places anymore, right? Because they're trying to last for 2 beats of 4/4, which is 4/8 notes, but I don't want that. I want them to last for um, I guess 6/8 notes each is what I think I'm going to do, or maybe I'll call it 6/8. Um, yeah, I'll call it 6/8 instead. So let me go back here and call it 6/8. So yeah, again, the chord symbols are not in the right place. But the question is, can I get them in the right place? And I think I can. I think if I'm clever enough, I can do it. And there's a command that MuseScore has that is not, it doesn't have a shortcut because it's really weird. And it doesn't have anything in the menu because it's really weird, but you can define it anyhow. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look for paste. And you'll see there's a command that says paste special. And I've already given it a shortcut of Control-Alt-Shift-E. I don't know why I picked that, but it was available. Paste special is we have this paste half duration, paste double duration. Paste special allows you to pick a different scaling factor. And if it happens to be possible, it'll work out. So what I'm going to do is right now, these are lasting, each chord is lasting for what was 2 beats in 4/4. It was lasting for 4/8 notes. Now I want it to last for 6/8 notes. This means I want it to last for, I'm going to switch to the advanced workspace so you'll be able to see the toolbar here. I want these chords that used to last for 6/8 notes, for 4/8 notes to now last for 6. So the way the paste special command works is, and you'll, as soon as you see it, you'll say, oh, that works, but it's crazy, and that's why we didn't put it in the menu, because it's crazy. You're going to select a duration in the toolbar, and it's going to turn quarter notes into that. So basically, I want to turn my quarter notes into dotted quarter notes. So I'm going to select everything in here, cut, and now I'm going to select the dotted quarter duration. And now I'm going to give that paste special command, Control-Alt-Shift-E. And it's going to paste those things where the quarter note is now the dotted quarter, the half is now the dotted half, and I think that's going to give me 1 chord per measure. Ha ha ha. Yes, it did. So it's given me 1 chord per measure, which is what I wanted. Now, when I changed the time signature, it got rid of my breaks, but that's okay. I want to re-add them every 4 bars now. So I'll come over here, let it be every 4 bars, and boom. Great. Now, you might also be looking at this and saying, hey, look, these rests are all kind of funny because of everything that's happened with the time signature. Well, that's okay. Well, that was fun. Um, so I'm back. I think I'm back now. I think I'm back. Let me know in the chat if I'm back. Um, I need to obviously fix a few things here. So give me a moment to fix what I need to fix. But hopefully you all can see my top of my head, front camera. Front camera. There we go. And I want to send the audio to my headphone. And that should be good. Yes, y'all hopefully can now see and hear me. Please, someone let me know that this actually works and that you can see me. Um, hopefully, please. Am I back? Okay, thank you. I'm back. All right, good. Okay, so yeah, my computer crashed. It's just a thing now. Every once in a while, I have crashes for no good reason. So I'm bringing MuseScore back, and unfortunately, I hadn't saved that, so I am going to say restore session, and let's see where it brings me back to. Ah, not a bad place. It's I need to redo my select all, cut, and then paste special. Ooh, when I do the paste special, I need to select again, dotted, quarter. Now paste special, and now format, add, remove system breaks every 4 bars, and now this time I'll save. Okay, so there we go. And let me pop out my chat again so I can see that. Okay, so what I was going to say is, yeah, these rests are a little distracting because when I kept changing the time signature, it messed up my rest. So what I want to do is I want to replace all those rests with just plain empty measure rests like this one here. There's a command for that. It's a little scary because it feels like you're going to delete a lot, but it's Shift Control Delete or Control Shift Delete. You might know Control Delete deletes, actually removes measures, but Shift Control Delete just converts any empty measures into full measure rests. Boom. Save again. All right. So, I'm gonna enter that melody. I had. 1, 2, 3, 1. So 5 dot A and then bum 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 bum. And I didn't write anything more than that. I really just wrote those 4 bars. And you know what? I'm just going to stop there because it's not about my melody here. It's about what I want to do with it. I've written this melody, but now is when I want to start thinking about its orchestration. Because I said I really gave no thought at all to the you don't see the score. Oh gosh, so sorry, so sorry. Yes, I need to make that happen. Sorry about that. Just one moment. I'm forgot that when I rebooted, of course, it no longer had when I rebooted, it no longer was able to keep the screen share going. So come back over here, screen share. Here we go, screen share. Yay! There's my song. Okay, so you all heard me sing, and I just redid the things that I did before, so you really didn't miss anything before. So here we go. So yeah, hopefully you're now seeing things, and I've got. And this tempo that I wrote is probably entirely wrong. Actually, that's not too far from 72. It's a little faster. I'm more like, say, 84. And I'm. Oops. 84. I'm just guessing. Nope, that's way too fast, right? Oh, that's because it was dotted quarter. I was probably right with the 72 to begin with. In fact, it might have been slower than that. It's because the original tempo marking was what the heck? Hello. I'm trying to just edit this and just type 72. I'm not sure what's going on there. Y'all see me typing, right? And it just turned into the number 72 and the rest of it just deleted. And I have no idea why. So, yet more gremlins to sort out. But for whatever reason, all right, now it's that. Yeah, so that's actually a little too fast. I'll call it 66. Are you going to let me type 66? Nope. All right, for some reason I'm having trouble typing today. Don't know why. So that's my melody. So I mentioned, and I'm going to continue to kind of work this. In like next week, I'll show you something else with it. But what I really wanted to show you here was something having to do with the idea of orchestration. And this was inspired by Dave, who had talked about during office hours a concert he was about to attend. In which there was going to be an 11-piece orchestra, which is a small orchestra, performing Beethoven's First Symphony. And this symphony it's not Beethoven's biggest symphony by any means. It's perhaps his smallest in terms of instrumentation. But still, it's 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets, timpani, a whole section of violins, whole section of second violins, whole section of violas, whole section of basses. Right? In order to do a full performance of this, you need 40 or more musicians really. And even if you say, oh, but the violin, it's only one part, you could do it with one violin. Well, you could, but it wouldn't balance. It wouldn't be big. The sound wouldn't be big enough. You need like 40 musicians or whatever number is to do a full performance of this, and yet it would be possible to reduce it down to only 11. So here's what it sounds like. I mean, this is MuseScore's playback, obviously. I'm not going to play the whole thing, just these first 6 measures. So that's all I wanted to play. So what we have there in that first page, yeah, he's using a lot of instruments, but if we really think about what's going on, there's only a handful of things actually happening. Like when the main melody, like first of all, at the beginning, we just have a big chord, right? It's just that. It's a C7 chord, 4 notes. If you just did that or spread the notes out, however you want to spread them out, you could do that with only 4 instruments. You could tell the story of that C chord going to an F chord with an E in the melody going to an F. You only need 4 instruments to do that. You could get by with fewer, really. It's, you're missing some notes, but you're telling the same story. It starts to get a little more interesting when the main melody comes in here, because you got right. We have that melody. Yes, I can sing while breathing in. But we also have the stuff going on in the flutes, which is also happening in the violas, but with a different last note, right? So what's going on in the flutes and what's going on in the viola is the same. And the horns then also do what the flute's doing, but they don't join it until a measure later. So we've got a whole note. We've got a third thing going on, but the whole note that they're doing here is the same whole note that the oboes and the clarinets have. So the horns are sometimes doing what the flute is doing, and sometimes it's doing what the oboes and clarinets are doing. But the point is, two flutes, two oboes, two clarinets, and two horns. That's 8 instruments that are only doing 2 things. One of them's going, ah, dun, 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 and the other half of them are going, one. So even though you got 8 instruments involved, there's only 2 things going on. So if you needed to reduce it down, you only need 2 instruments to do that. So I'm talking about this in terms of reducing a larger orchestra to a smaller orchestra, but the same thing goes around, the same thing occurs if you want to take your orchestration and expand it. You might only write 4 things, 4, SATB or something less than that, but and then you just expand it by giving more instrument, letting double, different instruments double things. So you can start thinking small, thinking about writing for piano, and then expand it bigger. So and so what I did is, as a sort of proof of concept, is I did an 11 piece. I don't know what the actual instrumentation is of the orchestra that Dave's going to be seeing here, but Beethoven Symphony. There's my version here. Here's my reduction of it for 1 flute, 1 clarinet, 1 bassoon, 2 horns, 1 trumpet, and 2 violins, not a whole first violin section, and 2 violas and 1 cello. That's 11 instruments. 6 winds, 5 strings. Some people might have done it differently. They might have said, hey, let's just let it be more strings and less winds. But as a wind player, I don't know. I think winds. So here's my version of it. And yeah, everything that happens, you can still see the same thing. Here's the people that have that whole note. This time it's the clarinet and the horn only. There's no more oboe. But I didn't need the oboe for that. And then here's the boo-da-dum, and I let one horn have the whole note, ba-do-da-da-da-da-da-dum, and I have the other horn go ba-do-dum, ba-da-dum. So I'm using the 2 horns, one to double the whole note line, one to double that arpeggio line, and then I've let the 2 violins both play that melody so it sounds big enough and full enough, and I've let the violas just double the other stuff there. I could have let one of the violas also have the melody, that's a decision to make, but the point is I didn't need 11 instruments. I could have done this with basically the melody part, the whole note part, the arpeggio part, and then the bass part. Boo, boo, boo. That's the bass part there. In this case, cellos, or cello, single cello. And a single cello, but I also have it doubled in the bassoon. So I'm still including some doubling here. I'm not using all 11 instruments. I'm not even using the trumpet, but I'm also not giving everyone a unique part. I could have scaled it down further, right? I could have lost the bassoon because it's just doubling the cello. I could have lost one of the horns because it's just doubling the clarinet, right? So there's a lot of things. I could have lost one of the violas because it's just doubling the clarinet also. So there's all sorts of ways that I could have taken this and done it for fewer instruments and not really lost anything except the bigness of it, but all the parts would have been there. So that's the thing that I want to get you to be thinking about, that a large ensemble doesn't mean a lot of things going on at once. It still means just a few things going on at once. Did I ever play it? No, I never did. Let's hear it. that's all I wrote. So, it's the same thing, right? It's just scaled down. But there's not a single thing that was in the original that's missing from this. Every part that made up that whole is still present in only 11 pieces. And you could bring it down further. I could have done this just with a string quartet and sold it pretty well also, just that much smaller. So, in your thinking about this, you could start by thinking small and then think bigger. It's just the opposite of this process. And maybe next time I'll do that. So, I wanted to give you some inspiration for working on your own versions of this. And yes, Joanne, you're right that the chat gets out of sync. And that's unfortunate, yeah, because there's always, whenever we do a live stream, whether it's YouTube or here, it's always like 10 seconds off or so. So I might say something and you don't hear it for like 10 seconds, and yeah, it's always a little off. But in any case, there you go. So I want to now turn my attention to Joel's fugue. And I call it a fugue because it's mostly a fugue. But, there's other stuff going on in it, and it's a part of a suite that he is writing that's going to involve other movements. So, Joel, if you are around and up for it, I'm inviting you to co-host, and you should see something pop up on your screen, and you click what it says to click, and next thing you know, you would be able to join if you're up for it. If not, that's fine too. But I will give you a moment to do that, and meanwhile, I'm going to tell you the couple things that I know about this, which isn't a whole lot. The pieces I've heard of Joel's before were like solo piano pieces, and they were kind of big romantic kind of things, or romantic, yeah, that's maybe the best way of describing them. And this piece has more, and I think I hear you here, which is great. This piece has more of a Baroque feel in some ways because of the subject of the fugue and the fact that it is a fugue, but then it goes into other territory harmonically and texturally also. So, Joel, welcome.
Hi there.
Hi. All right. So yes, this whole process, the fact that I can bring people on to talk about their pieces and have a discussion, it's one of the things I love about this particular platform. So YouTube has what it has going for it. This one has what it has going for it. So fantastic piece. I love your music, and just appreciate that what you've been sharing with us here.
Thank you.
So what do you want to tell us? I'm going to go through and I'm going to, hit the play button and let everyone hear this. I mean, a lot of people have heard it already because they would have heard it online. But what else do you want to, pretend people didn't already read the description. Tell us what you want to tell us about this before we listen.
Well, before we start, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a thrill to be here.
Great.
Well, this piece is the first movement of a suite that I'm going to be writing. It's about 4 or 5 movements in total. And it came out of a composer's blog, as we call it. I didn't know how to go on with other pieces I was working on. So I decided to do what Brahms used to do in Tchaikovsky, which is write counterpoint. And it worked out fine for me. Very nice subject came out. And I felt it for brass quintet, which I think I wrote to you on the thread. That is my second favorite ensemble. My favorite one is saxophone quintet, but I always loved the brass quintet, so therefore I started writing it for brass. The piece as of now is unfinished. This movement is unfinished, because since I've been so busy with school, I haven't been able to finish, but it's full enough so we can discuss stuff.
Yeah.
So
and there's a lot to it already. I mean, you call it unfinished, and there's a sense in which I think I can sense where you might be planning on going in places, but there's a lot to it already. It's not like one of these unfinished things where it's just like halfway there and then ends in the middle of a sentence. It's like I
always try to finish it on a period or a semicolon.
Yeah.
But Yeah, about the music itself, it's a fanfare, and the subtitle, I mean, the title is in Spanish. My native language is Spanish, I'm Puerto
Mm-hmm.
Rican, but I always write the subtitle in English. It is called the Tins Holders March. I was thinking about these little soldiers walking around and marching, gathering together for a sort of not a war, but like a parade or something. So I wanted to mix the Baroque texture, which is the fugue, with the fanfare, which is basically what we think about when we hear soldiers' marches, which is fanfare, loud music, booming sound. So I took the fanfare stuff to make the fugue relax a little bit and breathe. So instead of going um, subject, counter subject, episode, then subject, counter subject, episode and episode. The episodes I thought of them more like the fanfare parts where I could relax the counterpoint a little bit.
Nice. Cool. No, that's a great idea. And that's one of the things that makes it start to feel like, oh, well, it's starting from this Baroque structure, but then there's other things going on in it for sure. Also, the way you modulate is is definitely much more modern.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'd like to just play the piece if unless you have something else you want to say up front.
But by the way, the score is in concert C
Yes.
because as a pianist, it's much easier for me to think in concert C than transposing while composing counterpoint.
Yes, me too. And because if I turn off the concert pitch button, we'll see now the trumpets are transposed and everyone's got different key signatures. And yeah, most of us don't like to think that way. That's why we have software to think for us.
Yes.
That's a really nice thing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I don't think there's any repeats in it, but just in case, I'm turning off the repeats, just so we can hear it and keep talking. All right, so I'll go ahead and play it, and then we can talk some more. Okay?
Sure.
All right, here we go.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. There's just so many wonderful things going on in this piece. Um, and yeah, again, I look forward to kind of diving in a little bit more and talking about some stuff. Is it so? Let's talk about any of the specific things. Like, how about if you walk us through the form a little bit and tell us, like help people see the overall structure of this.
Well, in terms of the form
Oh, by
itself,
the way, before you go on,
yes.
uh, uh, Rod mentioned that you had echo. Is everyone hearing echo from Joel, or because if so, that's probably something that I need to fix. And I thought that I did what I needed to do to fix that, but let me just try this again. Um, mm,
Yeah, I hear echo myself.
okay, let me try this again. This should have fixed it. So talk some more and let us know if you still hear echo.
Okay, now? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. The echo's gone.
Okay. So yeah, when the thing crashed and I came back, I apparently didn't do everything I actually needed to do to fix that. So apologies there, but now hopefully it's better. So okay, so now go ahead and let's go back to you telling us what you were going to tell us here.
Yeah, so the piece itself is in the form of a fugue, as you saw.
Mm-hmm.
Um, about the form in general, like I said, the fugue, as you should know by now, because Mark is a fantastic counterpoint teacher. Um,
Thank you.
you've seen that the fugue starts with the subject, then comes second voice.
So there's
On
the
the
subject
fifth,
for people who know, this is what he means by subject, and this is what he means by the second voice. Bum. So,
exactly.
right. So this, what the second trumpet plays, is almost identical to what the horn plays, except it's transposed up and adjusted a little bit to fit the harmonies.
Correct, because I start working with what's called um, the horn's fifth. Ba ba ba. That's a very typical horn interval.
Mm-hmm.
When the second voice comes in, according to the rules of counterpoint, that answer, which is that's technical term, the subject and the answer. The answer is in what's called the tonal answer. It's not
Exactly.
exactly the same way as the beginning. And it's because of very old rules that fugues have that haven't been amended for some reason, but that's the way it is. So the tonal answer is just a little bit outside of the typical range of what the subject is, but
Mm-hmm.
it works just fine. And
And actually, let me just address that for people who are new to this. If because the usual thing that happens when the second voice enters it enters a fifth higher or fourth lower. But if it went and did that exactly, so it starts off with bum bum bum, and then if it reproduced that, it would go bum bum bum. It would go up to a C. But if it went up to a C, harmonically speaking, that would feel like we're not on the one chord because we're in the key of B flat. We want when that second voice comes in to feel like we're still in the key of B flat, and so we will perform adjustments to the melody so that when that second voice comes in, it still feels like we're in the original key. And then eventually, yeah, you're going to have E naturals. It is going to move to the key of F as it moves along. But we like at the beginning of that second entrance to be able to keep the illusion that we're still in the same original key. And that's kind of where that comes from.
which is different to the real answer, in which when
Mm-hmm.
the second voice already starts, you are in the fifth
Yeah.
already. But those are technical things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the third entrance comes in, which is the original,
Yep.
subject, I double the trombone with the tuba, and that's usually because when you're working with a four voice texture in a 5 instrument setting, you have to do some doublings. And
Yeah.
the typical thing to do is when you're doing the trombone, if it's a tenor trombone, which I chose to be a tenor trombone, it could have chosen to be a euphonium or a bass trombone to give it more depth. But I needed that brightness of the tenor trombone, and the tuba in itself is deep enough, so I don't need anything deeper than that. I doubled the subject to make it sound like the pedals on organ. So I was
Hmm.
thinking more like an organ fugue, more than just an
Ah.
instrumental fugue.
Okay, because I was wondering about your choice to double there. A lot of people would double an upper voice, occasionally
Yeah,
double an inner voice, or double something across the thing. So deliberately doubling the two bottom voices, I knew was giving it a somewhat bottom heavy feel, but knowing that you were thinking organ pedal really explains that quite well.
yeah, and it works very fine because the brilliance, the brightness of the tenor trombone at the top voice, and then the depth of the tuba makes it precisely sound like you're having a what's called in organ terminology, you having a 16 foot versus an 8 foot. Um, so it makes it sound deeper and stronger. So when I finish the exposition of the four voices coming in, I also notice that the first trumpet is not a regular trumpet, is a piccolo B flat trumpet. And I needed that register up there because in the organ you have the flute register, and the flutes are very high,
Hmm.
and therefore I couldn't have been able to do that with a regular trumpet. Even a D piccolo trumpet was taken out of the picture because I consulted some trumpeters, and they, the D piccolo trumpet is very difficult to play. So if I wanted to choose a piccolo trumpet, which I needed that sound, the B flat piccolo, it was better. So for those of you that don't know about orchestration very much, the B flat trumpet is a regular trumpet that everybody plays. In the symphony orchestra context, it's more like a C trumpet. It's very similar in range, but the piccolo trumpet is an octave higher than the B flat. So I have basically uh, the same kind of rhythm texture for the trumpets. Only the B flat trumpet is always written what it looks like an octave higher, but it's not. It's really on the same octave. And if you see the same note in the piccolo trumpet, remember it's an octave higher. That's why it sounds
Hmm.
so brilliant.
Right, and
So
it's written that way because you've got the octave clef there, which is what MuseScore does
exactly,
by default, I think.
exactly.
Yeah.
So after the fourth voice enters, which is the piccolo trumpet, I go to an episode in which I play around with the
So here's the fourth voice coming in.
exactly.
Yep.
So after that, I go to what's called an episode. And episodes are your way of developing the material within the fugue itself. Because when you think development, it's not the sonata form development, which is a section in itself. So the episodes are the places where you develop the music itself,
Hmm.
and you're gonna have from there on. For those of you that don't understand the fugue very well, you have the exposition, which is your first four or five, or whichever number of voices you have.
Right, and
The
so the
all
exposition
expose.
ends pretty much right where you have the key change, right? Because that's
Exactly,
essentially that is the when that fourth voice comes in, which is the piccolo trumpet, pom pom
mhm,
pom da 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 da. That's the end of.
exactly. With
Now
the
all
three,
voices have stated the subject. Exposition is done.
exactly. It ends when you have the trill. Da dee ba
Mm-hmm.
ba dee eh, da da da.
Da-da-dum.
That's the
Right
end of
there.
the exposition right
That
there.
note right there.
Exactly. And then you go to the episodes, which are development material that uses basically the same thing you have been hearing all along. it works it through in different ways. It puts it in different places, and the composer have a lot of flexibility as to how to develop the episodes. Now, after the episode, you're going to have a progression of episode, subject entrance, episode, subject entrance. That's the way Baroque composers, especially Bach, did it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
since I'm not Baroque, I didn't want to compose a Baroque fugue.
Yeah.
The episodes are broken down. I started with the episode in a very contrapuntal way, but I broke them down into fanfare stuff. That's where the fanfare comes in.
Mm.
To make it fresher, more modern, I can harmonically play along a little bit more, with the harmony and the melody. And then after the fanfare ends, I start with the next exposition of the subject, whether it be wherever, soprano, alto, tenor, or bass. But after, for example, like there, da 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 da
Mm.
da, there
Yeah.
you start the next subject entrance. So that's like a broken off episode in a total and not Baroque way,
Mm.
but that's to give it a fresher sound, obviously.
Yeah, and this is where also harmonically it starts to deviate because up until the episodes harmonically it feels very baroque also. But
Hmm.
what happens in the episode, so I want people to pay attention to this. So we have what happens here now is these are called sequences, and it's like the same melody that kind of keeps moving its way down. So let's just listen to that part. Da 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 da. And so Bach loved using sequences like that to move through keys, but he didn't move through keys as quickly as you do. So
Yeah, and that's a very
this
Baroque
yeah.
feature, by the way.
Yeah, and it is, and yet harmonically it ends up sounding more modern because of the fact that you're being more daring harmonically key wise. And then it goes into this section here, which
That's fanfare.
yeah. And here, it's right. All the instruments have the same rhythm, and that's what makes it more fanfare-like and less contrapuntal, I guess.
Hmm.
But this
And by,
section here, this is the restatement of the original subject, bum bum ba da 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 da. But now it's in the minor key.
yeah, let me point out that my intention with all the key changes and sequences was to arrive to the relative minor, because usually when you have a fugue like this, and now this is coming back to the very baroque feeling of it. When you're writing a fugue, usually the way you deal with modulations is that you try to stay within the circle of the key tonality. B flat is our key tonality, therefore G minor is our relative minor, right? So we are staying within the family basically,
Mm-hmm.
and all those key changes um, are basically trying to steer the ship, if you will, to arrive into the relative minor.
And you definitely arrive there. I'm observing that you are taking a somewhat more scenic route there than some other people might have taken, and I love that. I mean, I that's to me what makes this piece especially interesting is the way it deviates from how Bach might have done it, and yet still honors what he might have done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because
yes,
that was very daring. When you hear, especially the organ fugues, if
yeah.
you dare get into that, I mean not you, Mark. I mean
Yeah, but
your
no, the
audience.
organ fugues are big because yeah, the like well-tempered clavier, these are small fugues. They're short. The
Yes,
organ fugues get bigger and yeah, indeed,
and
harmonically more
daring,
daring. Yeah.
harmonically, Bach does things that you go like, whoa, where did
Yeah.
he go there?
Yes. And
It's
by the way,
very
Humble
daring.
the Music, you were asking about all voices sound before episodes. Well, that's, you can do whatever you want. But yes, as far as the classic way that fugues are organized,
Yeah.
you complete your exposition of each voice coming in, with a complete subject statement. And once each voice has had the complete subject statement, then your episodes begin. Now, it
Yeah.
is
By the
not
way,
uncommon.
too.
There's what's called a bridge, which could
Uh
be like
huh.
connecting material. Like one subject entrance might end, and then you need to like get back to the original key. So there could be like a couple of measures before, of in between subject statements, and the difference between that and what's called an episode is just words. So yeah, there
And
can be little
to humble
interludes.
new music's comment, yes, the answer, as Mark said, is
Hmm.
yes. Those little mini episodes between voices sometimes are needed, sometimes are not, depending on how you want to work the fugue out. Uh, but yes, you can think about it like, for example, the eventually in the classical period, what the fugue ended up doing was being the seed for the sonata form, because you have your exposition where you have all your melodies exposed. Then the development section is kind of like a very extended episode. That's
Hmm.
what it is. Then you
Yeah.
have the recapitulation. So yes, you have to basically, that's what's called the exposition. You have to expose or present, if you will, all the voices.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about that analogy from getting from fugue to sonata form, one of the other kind of transitional things is a fugue is essentially based on a single subject. Yes, there might be a counter subject that's heard against it, but they go hand in hand, and
Hmm.
the advancement or the change that happens in the traditional sonata form is, hey, let's have our exposition not be based on a single subject, but have two contrasting themes. And so now your exposition itself gets bigger, and then therefore you have more material to work with in the development, which is why you end up with, 20-minute symphony movements and not 3-minute fugues.
Exactly. Exactly.
So so again, just really fabulous stuff, and I do want to, like, not I went on pretty long with the cafe yesterday. I don't want to take too long here, but let's talk about a couple other little sections in here. Like the section that starts here is
Another
kind of
fanfare section.
interesting, right? Another fanfare, bum ba da dum. That's fanfare rhythms right there.
Yeah.
And,
So what I did there was basically shortening up the episodes because let's face it, I could be very long-winded when writing. So I wanted to remind myself this is just
ah.
the first movement of the suite, and also remind myself these are wind players. You can play, I mean, 7,000 minutes in a keyboard, but
Hmm.
the wind players have so much time to recover. So, I
That is
mean,
a really good observation. You have to be really careful writing for winds, especially brass, actually. And now that I'm looking at this trombone part, yeah, this trombone player, you're making him work because I haven't seen any rests for a long time here. Once that trombone play comes in, he doesn't get to sit out for quite a while. Not,
mhm.
yeah. So it's like definitely a consideration. It's not like it doesn't happen, but because especially in small ensembles, yeah, you're going to expect everyone to be playing all the time for the most part. But that is something you might have to make another pass on
But
and think about.
but thank you for pointing it out. The trombone plays basically from when he starts at the entrance of the third voice,
Hmm.
but I keep the trombone on a register that is very comfortable for
Yeah.
him or her to play. So even though yes, he's been playing for a long time, the only places where you really see him shining, if you will, is where the subject comes in the trombone at the beginning of that episode where he has the melody. Um,
In the
but
G
other
minor
than that,
section. Yeah.
exactly there. That's where you hear the trombone
Hmm.
really shining in the upper register. But other than that, I keep him
Yeah.
in the middle register where it's very comfortable for them to play,
And
even
do you
on the
play a
lower
brass
register.
instrument?
What?
Do you play a brass instrument?
I do play a little bit of tuba and trombone,
Good.
not
Good.
enough.
No, but
But
enough to have a sense, because I have no intuitive feel for how much is too much. So I rely on handing music to other brass players to say, hey, what do you think about this?
yeah,
So yeah, it's good that you
but I
have
also
that
consulted
experience.
a very, very good friend of mine who was studying with me at the Conservatory of Music in Puerto Rico here, and he's a bass trombonist, and he gave me very specific observations, which were very, very good for me to keep in mind.
Good.
Right, for example, the other instruments they have pistons, but the trombone has a slide.
Mm-hmm.
So very fast notes are going to be difficult for the trombone to keep in tune. Other also the tuba, even though it can have 3 or 4 pistons, it can feel like it's told me in the commentary and on the thread can feel like a 30-second note behind because
It
when the
takes a
sound
long time to get
finally
that air
comes
through.
out, it's a lot of tube.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
It's a lot of air. So I can feel behind a little bit. I was mindful of that
good.
to try to keep it, in balance.
Yeah, and these are all things that, experience helps a lot, whether you either play the instrument or play with people who play these instruments. Like I play with a lot more trumpet players than I do trombone players or tuba players. So I have a lot of feel for what's reasonable on trumpet and less feel for what's reasonable on trombone, but still some, less still on tuba. But, to some extent, brass is brass, but, the more experience you have with instruments, whether playing them or playing with these people, the better.
Also, the breath markings, I didn't put in breath markings until the end because the phrases are, you can understand where to breathe by the phrasing. But if you're inexperienced enough, I was very mindful of making the phrases very regular so that the player could actually breathe
Yeah.
because again you're playing with your breath, with your fingers.
And that brings up another good point. In contrapuntal music, in my experience, it matters less where you choose to breathe because you're not having to synchronize with anyone else. In other words, if your part isn't the same thing rhythmically as what someone else is doing, breathe whenever you want, within reason. It's the places where everyone has the same rhythms
Hmm.
where it becomes the most important to have the same breathing as well so that or to stagger the breathing so you don't it becomes important to think about the breathing a little harder when the rhythms come together, but the more contrapuntal the piece is, the more you can just give players that freedom.
Yeah, and I did that by the end. Um, Also, if you can roll it down just a little bit because I want people to see that after that fanfare, I go into a very sequential section. I use a lot of
Yes,
sequences,
and
but
this is
then
another one
I
of these
deviate
harmonically.
totally.
You what?
I deviate a lot harmonically there.
Yes, this goes all over the place. Man, look at this. We're about to be in six flats. And now it's in from whatever G flat major to F sharp minor, yeah, so it's just kind of really, really moving places. This is definitely more of a romantic era and beyond stuff going on harmonically through these sequences. So
But
using a
funny
time
enough,
honored
like,
technique, but taking it to new places.
yeah, funny enough, I was thinking more of, well, I don't want to say Schubert, but Schubert had a very nice trick where when he was writing sonata pieces, like in sonata form, there is a very big tendency for him to use the flat six interval to write the
Mm.
second section. So
Ah.
let's say he starts out in B flat, like I started.
Uh huh.
Well, let's put in C major, which is easier for people to
Mm-hmm.
visualize. He starts in C major. The typical way you treat a sonata form is either you write a second section in A minor or in F major or in G major, typically in G major to end up in the dominant.
Right.
What Schubert did was after he finished the exposition, he made a modulation to start the development section in A flat major. He
Hmm.
uses the flat six. So that's a very Schubertian thing to do. and I love it because it takes you out of your wits a little bit. So
Yeah, and I think
you
of
expect
Schumann when I think of those sorts of modulations
Schumann
also.
too,
Yeah.
and Brahms, and later, let's say Rachmaninoff went a lot of places
Mm-hmm.
in his music.
Yeah. So anyhow, again, just fabulous piece, and I'd love to just keep going, and maybe we'll talk some more some other time. But I think this is probably a good point to wrap up. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to hearing where this piece goes. Maybe when you finish, you're still working on this first movement, right?
Yes, I am.
So yeah, maybe when you finish, we'll take a look at it and hear where you end up going with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thanks everyone for being here. And yeah, Joel, I love your music. Keep doing it. All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. So thanks everyone, and yeah, this is what we do here, right? And hope you all got something useful out of both the things that we talked about here, talking about the contest, and by all means, keep working on that. Uh, and then, hopefully you got something about fugues and something about fanfares, writing for brass, all the things we've talked about today. Always so much to learn, so much to work on, right? So, this has been the Music Masterclass with Marc Sabatella, and Joel was joining us for his piece. And just come back next week and we'll have more music to talk about. By all means, participate in the contest again. Would love to have as many people participating as possible because that's how we all learn together. And as I said last week, your chances of winning, if you don't enter, are 0. If you do enter, they're not 0, right? That's the most important thing you can do is just get that entry in. So I encourage you to get something in there. So I look forward to talking to you next time. See you later.